Hey everyone, Complex back with another video, and today we're back to Warframe and we're going to chat about my top 5 new player tips. Now, before we dive into these tips, I did want to bring up something that is kind of talked about, but not really talked about all that often when referring to Warframe. And that is that Warframe is a game that is always growing and changing. So if you're new to Warframe, bear in mind that the Warframe that you're playing right now might not be the same Warframe that you're playing in 6 months to a year. I mean, even in the last few months, we've seen a lot of huge changes in Warframe. We had Melee 2.0 come in, we had the Kuva Liches, we've had Railjack. I mean, Railjack was a huge change to the game. So Warframe, like I said, always growing, always changing. So as you're playing, just know that some of the things and the systems that you learn early on might not be the same ones that you end up playing in a few months, and that's okay. That is one of the beauties of Warframe. So just make sure you're just enjoying and embracing the change that is Warframe, because I, for one, actually love that about Warframe. However, let's just dive on in to my top 5 tips. Now, first up, setting up the 2FA. There is a 2-step authenticator for Warframe that you can set up, and I cannot begin to tell you enough how much you need that setup. Not only is it just important to protect your account, because account safety is heck important. You put so much time into this game. You don't want somebody hacking and stealing everything that you've worked so hard for, but you also get a free ephemera for setting up the 2FA on the website, and then also you can't trade with other players currently in the game until you have 2FA set up. So make sure you're just going to head to the Warframe website, log in with your account, and then in the account settings you will see an option where you can set up 2FA. It's very close to where you would link your Twitch account to your Warframe account. So just make sure you're doing that. And also, while you're there, if your Warframe account isn't linked to your Twitch account, make sure you do that. Warframe does a ton of drops on Twitch, both for their partners or just people that stream Warframe, but also generally when they do either primetime or a dev stream, there are a lot of free drops that happen and some pretty cool stuff, or just useful things like we've had Forma, ducats, all that good stuff. And then we've even had things like noggles and weapons and so on and so forth. So make sure you have 2FA on, as well as linking your Warframe to your Twitch account. Now, up next, we have crafting in Warframe. Warframe is a very resource heavy and credit heavy game. There is a lot of crafting. Pretty much everything that you're gonna need in this game, whether it be Warframes, weapons, even down to your companions, they are all craftable within the game. So I'd highly suggest early on learning the most efficient ways to not only grind for resources, but also credits. Is going to make your life so much easier if you know how to quickly get a whole lot of X or Y resources. Now, if you are looking for a particular resource, one thing that you can do is open up the navigation, and where you would put an extractor drone, it will show you also what resources are available on that planet, and that's going to be super helpful. Let's say you just need salvage, you could head on over to Jupiter and farm salvage from the various mission types that are available. You can also, of course, drop extractor drones to get resources, or you can just continually grind out the various missions in the game. Most people prefer to do long defenses or long survivals and to do just farming ones, and they'll bring what is called farming frames, but that's something that we'll talk about in an entirely separate video. Now, when it comes to credit grinding, there are a wide variety of ways that you can get a large amount of credits quickly should you need to. I have an entire video that walks you through that, and I will link that in the description of the video down below. So if you have any questions on credit grinding, make sure that you check that out. Now, up next for my third tip for new players, modding. Modding Warframe is essential to giving your Warframe or weapons power. It's how you make yourself the most effective for whatever kind of combat that you're doing. The modding system in Warframe, while it's really fun once you figure it out, it can take a hot minute to figure out. I'm not gonna lie, when I was a new player, I was heckin' confused by it. There was a lot to it. There still is a lot to it. And I know a lot of veterans are like, oh, it's easy. You just put this mod here and that mod there. And you're just like, what? So when you start modding out a weapon or a Warframe, take it slow. Use basic mods, so mods that'll give you health and shields until you get the hang of it. There is also a auto mod feature that you can access when you're modding out your Warframe or weapons or companions, anything like that. So if you are entirely unsure of how to make yourself a build, the auto mod option is fantastic because it's just going to show you the basics of a rudimentary build that you can critique and tweak along the way to give yourself more of what you want play style wise. Another option is, of course, you can pick your favorite power or ability from a Warframe and build your mod system around that. You can hover over the ability that a Warframe might have when you're in the modding screen, for instance, and you can see how when you slot a mod in or take it out, it will affect either make it more powerful or it won't change it or anything like that for some of the stats. So you can kind of pay attention to that to give yourself a leg up for that particular ability. I do have an entire basics of modding video. It walks you through just like the really basic parts of modding. I will also link that in the description down below, and you can check that out if you have any questions on the beginners of modding. Now up next we have the Prime system. When I first started playing, the Prime system was super confusing and I didn't really understand what the difference between a Prime weapon or a Prime Warframe and a regular weapon or Warframe was and what I should concentrate on. Prime weapons, Prime Warframes are supposed to be the kind of upscaled pinnacle version of what is a regular Warframe or weapon. So something like a Saren Prime is going to be the quote unquote better and more refined version of Saren. For the most part, the stats are the same. Sometimes you'll get a polarity change. You might get a little bit more armor, a little bit more shields, just depending on the Warframe and how it's been spec'd out. Most of the time people do prefer to play as a Prime frame because you're just going to get a little bit more power, like I said, in either armor, shields, or something like that to give you a bit of a leg up. The nice part about the Prime system is that it's really something that you don't have to worry about until you've been playing for a little bit, if I'm being honest. However, you might notice that along the way you're going to be picking up relics and you want to save those and crack them whenever you need to, or maybe would like to venture into the relic cracking system. The relics are what house your various Prime parts, and from there in your foundry you can see what you need to do to either build a piece of, let's say, a Necros Prime or a Saren Prime. And then from there, you'll eventually be able to build the entirety of the Warframe. Something like weapons, they're parts that you pick up, like their barrels, receivers. They don't actually get built separate like you would normally do Warframe parts. You just will pick up the barrel, the receiver, the handle, whatever it is you need. And then once you get the weapon blueprint, you piece it all together. So they are varied just a little bit. The other thing to bear in mind is that Prime parts are one of the only things that you can trade as far as weapons and Warframes go. Normally you can't trade like a regular Hydroid Neuroptics. You can't just trade that with somebody. However, a Hydroid Prime Neuroptics that hasn't been built and is just the blueprint for that, you can actually trade that. You can't trade fully built Prime parts, but you can trade just the blueprints or like a weapon barrel or a weapon blueprint or something like that. So that is something to bear in mind as you're going forward. Now, another thing to take into account is the cycle of Prime frames. So normally about once a quarter, we get a brand new Prime frame. And at any given time, there are about roughly 7 quote unquote new Prime frames active. And when we get a new Prime frame that comes in, the oldest of what is considered the new ones ends up getting vaulted. And when a Prime frame and it's whatever it came with, whether that be weapons or sentinels, gets vaulted, that is no longer available to open in a relic. So if you have relics with those Prime parts, you can still, of course, open those to try to get it, but you won't be getting any new relics from the drop table with those parts in it. So if you are somebody that is looking to start collecting Prime frames and you're new to Warframe, I would highly suggest not looking at what is new for the Prime stuff, but looking at what's about to get vaulted. So then that way you can start that catalog that way. So it's just a little bit less stressful when it comes time for something to get vaulted. Now, DE does let you know, by the way, ahead of time when a frame is going to get vaulted. So then that way you have plenty of time to either collect some relics or try to crack what you have, just in hopes of getting it all before it goes into the vault. Now, speaking of Prime vaults, occasionally they do open up the Prime vault. So they will bring out a series of like Warframes. Normally it's like 1, maybe 2, sometimes even 3 Warframes, and whatever weapons and sentinels and stuff like that it came with all become unvaulted. And what that means is that for a limited amount of time, specialty relics are available in various drop tables that have these previously vaulted frames. So then that way, if let's say you weren't playing Warframe or you just didn't get a certain something like a Warframe or a weapon, you have a chance to acquire it so you don't ever miss out on any prime objects. So that is something to bear in mind. Don't stress about missing something, especially if you're coming into Warframe with something being vaulted. Like for instance, when I got into Warframe, Saren was getting vaulted for the first time, and Saren has been one of my favorite frames since I started playing, and I was a little sad that I was like, oh no, she's vaulted, I'm never gonna get her again. But she did get unvaulted. We have had a few opportunities to get her since, so don't worry. If there's something that you want and you just can't get it right now, you will be able to crack it open in a relic down the road. Now, last but not least, we have my 5th tip, and that is to use the wiki. I know that might sound a little weird in a video with tips and tricks for Warframe, but there's a lot that goes on in Warframe, especially for things like drop tables, what certain enemies or just bosses are resistant to, certain aspects to quests that might be a little confusing, and the wiki has it all laid out. For instance, you can learn through the wiki what like a defense mission is going to drop at what tier and what the percentage is. So let's say you're doing a defense mission on Jupiter and you want to know what rotation C is going to drop and what the percentage odd for that is. You can see all of that on the wiki. It's super easy to see, and it just makes your life a lot easier. And I can't suggest enough when you're doing boss fights, especially for the first time, checking out what that boss is either resistant to or what's going to help you kill it the quickest or what weapons they might recommend. There is a whole host of information on there, and it's going to make your life a lot easier if you start using it. But y'all, that is going to be it from me today. Hopefully this helped if you were having any questions, especially as a new player in Warframe. If you have any additional questions, leave it in the comments down below or find me on Twitch. I do stream Warframe at least once a week and always happy to help when and where I can. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your night and or day, depending on where you are in the world, and I will catch you next time. Bye, guys.